And you want to start us off, Angie?
Yeah, great. Excellent. Okay, let me begin today by first of all welcoming all of you to this webinar today. I hope you've all been hearing the news, receiving the news that the California College of Ayurveda has merged with Hindu University of America. So in other words, HUA has acquired this College of Ayurveda, California College of Ayurveda, and CCA will now function as a school, an important school within Hindu University of America. This is a major milestone for Hindu University of America, and I am just sharing this news with all of you. Next week, same time, next week, we are going to have a joint community town hall where we'll have the entire community of CCA join us. And that includes the faculty, the staff, many students, alumni, etc. They'll be joining the webinar. And of course, we'll have our faculty, students, and alumni and so on join the webinar as well. So we'll have a sort of a town hall, a HUA CCA joint town hall. Same time, next week, Saturday. So please mark your calendars and make sure you're there for this very, very important event and milestone in the journey of Hindu University of America. Okay. Now, having said that, I want to move on to our topic for today. We have two of our distinguished faculty from the graduate division participating with us today. Dr. Vishwa Adluri and Dr. Joydeep Bakshi. And they both have done a tremendous amount of work in the realms of philosophy, Indology, textual studies, textual criticism, and a number of related areas. Dr. Vishwa Adluri has 3 PhDs, which is quite extraordinary. He has a PhD in Western philosophy, then a PhD in Indology, and a PhD in Sanskrit. And Dr. Joydeep Bakshi, in comparison, has only one PhD, but in philosophy from New School of Social Research, New York. I want to extend a very warm welcome to both of you, Dr. Vishwa Adluri and Dr. Joydeep Bakshi. Okay, thank you for joining us today. And I also want to extend a very warm welcome to all the participants who are on the webinar today. Thanks for setting aside the time and joining us. So today we're going to talk about 2 graduate courses. These courses are upcoming. They're going to start very soon. In fact, this month, in a couple of weeks. Dr. Vishwa Adluri is going to speak about the graduate course that he is teaching this upcoming semester, and it's called Mahabharata 2, Dicing and Exile. And Dr. Joydeep Bakshi is going to be speaking about his course, which is titled The Bhagavad Gita and the West. Now, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Vishwa Adluri to share a little bit about his course, and then he'll be followed by Dr. Joydeep Bakshi talking about his course. And then I'll come back and say a few words about the programs in which they are housed and so on. Over to you, Dr. Adluri. You're on mute, huh? We're not able to hear you. You're on mute.
Namaste, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for joining this webinar. Every single of us at HUA has dedicated their lives to building this institution. As you know, while Shastric knowledge and Indian knowledge systems continue, Western critiques also continue. And there comes a time when we have to step up and engage in critical dialogue, clarifying dialogue, and counter some of the incorrect notions that are foisted on us. I'm going to be, to that end, I am in charge, Professor Bagchi and I are in charge of texts and traditions portion of Hindu University of America's curriculum. Please take a look. Please take a look at the website and all the divisions and so on. We have various programs. Kalyan will be talking about them towards the end. I teach 4 courses on the Mahabharata, and my aim is to have everyone, all my students, read the entire Mahabharata over a course of 4 semesters. But first, I would like to share with you a PowerPoint I created, which will be shared here. I'm sure you all know this, but just so we'll have a common vocabulary to talk about, here is the Mahabharata. The second portion of the Mahabharata, which is after the Adi Parva. So in the first course, I do general things about Mahabharata and Adi Parva, but you don't have to have taken that course. All these 4 could be taken in any order. They're all standalone courses. In Gambling and Exile, as you know, it includes Virata Parva. No, it includes Sabha Parva, Vana Parva, Virata Parva, and Udyuga Parva. The Pandavas lose Indraprastha in gambling. They go into exile. They spend 1 year incognito, Ajnata Vasa, and then they return. And Krishna goes to the Hastinapura court to make their case for the Pandavas. All right. A brief introduction to the very great epic. People think that the epic is a mishmash, that there are all these stories dumped into it, that it was originally an oral epic, and people kept on adding things to it, and so on. No such thing. It is a very carefully crafted text, and it is one of the most incredible manuscript traditions anywhere. This includes even later Western works, such as Dante, for example. The precision with which 75,000 verses of the 100,000 verses, alleged verses, were carefully preserved using very perishable media such as palm leaves and birch barks, shows the dedication to which our culture gave themselves and their children to protecting and transmitting this epic. It is the greatest thing any Hindu boy or girl can hope to achieve in their life, which is to contribute to the study, transmission, preservation of this tradition. The Mahabharata, as you know, has a very unique circular composition. The story begins at the end. Everyone is dead in the Kurukshetra war, and Janamejaya, the son of Parikshit, who's the son of Abhimanyu, who's the son of Arjuna, is the last remaining Kuru. Janamejaya is told the whole story of the Mahabharata at a very weird sacrifice called Sarpasatra, where snakes are being offered into the sacrifice to avenge Takshaka killing Parikshit, who is Janamejaya's father. In that story, Janamejaya is born at the end and will be the last Kuru asking to hear the story. So if you read the whole thing, after you read the war and everything, Janamejaya is born again in the story. So the story forms a kind of an infinite loop within itself, which is quite remarkable because it resembles the cycles of the Jiva and the cycles of Kala. The epic, as you know, is divided into 18 parts. These are called parvans. There are 18 parvans. And 18 is a significant number in the epic. The war lasted for 18 days. There were 18 armies in the war. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, and so on. So 18 is a marker. I'm just telling you this because it gives you a hint as to how carefully these texts were crafted and episodically so that the whole could be preserved as a whole and in parts, and there would be specific markers organizing the vast body of this enormous text. So if you look at the book of beginning, which is the English translation for Adi Parva, it goes through 18 chapters and it returns to Janamejaya's sacrifice. Again, it begins and it goes. The epic falls into 3 sections. So 1 to 6, Bhishma falls in the 6th Parva, and you get Bhagavad Gita. And in 12, the war is over. So you get the Shanti Parva, which is book 12. And then after the war, as you know, all the characters quickly exit and go back to heaven, only to descend again and continue the cycle again. In the end of Shanti Parva, there is an important theological tract called Narayaniya, which contains a full theology of Narayana. It contains Vishnu's avatars. It contains the doctrine of Trimurtis. It contains the presentation of agamic ritual, smarta ritual. It contains Narada teaching bhakti and moksha, and it also contains the Vedantic philosophy of there being only one Purushottama. So theologically, Hinduism is based on the Mahabharata, but Vyasa has absorbed the Veda into the Mahabharata, and therefore if you get the Mahabharata, you get the quintessence of the Veda as well. This is not an exaggeration. Shankaracharya himself says that forget the whole Mahabharata. The Bhagavad Gita itself is the Sarva Vedanta Sara Sangraha Bhutam. It is the quintessence of all Upanishadic and Vedic teaching. The Bhagavad Gita tells you how to live in this universe. How should we live? We should live heroically, not afraid of death, but we should do our karma yoga. We make a contribution for loka sangraha, and then without being attached to the fruits, we keep working. So heroically and with detachment, you live in the samsara, but how do you escape the repeating cycles of rebirth? And Narayaniya will give you a full moksha dharma and Vishnu Bhakti tract in that. So that will come in Mahabharata 4, when I teach the 4th and the last portion. This will come up in detail. So Adi Parvan, all the characters descend. There is a kind of Adi Vamsha Avatarana. And then, as I said, Bhagavad Gita, how to live in Pravritti, Narayaniya, how to get moksha. And here, those who become devoted to Narayana and understand the Narayaniya Dharma, or also known as Bhagavata Dharma, they escape the textual cycle. But the rest of the characters go back in, and if you do not get moksha in this life, you have to repeat this cycle, or at least in this life itself, you have to read the Mahabharata again and again until one time you're reading the Narayaniya, and then you snap and become a Jivan Mukta. The coils of karma just fall away. That is how the text is designed. So it's a very intelligent text, not at all the kind of stories for children, etc. It's not just for children. It is Veda, which is meant for children, women, and also Shudras, so that everybody can be made part of this pedagogical system. In this pedagogical system, we learn how to live this life, we learn how to get moksha. So the Hindu University of America offers graduate level courses, as I began my talk, graduate level courses on the entire Mahabharata. This is how they're divided. Adi Parva alone is the first semester. The first unit, which can be taken independently. Each of these units can be taken in any order because it's a circular composition, remember? So you can start anywhere in the circle and continue.
Vishwa, your internet is not coming through properly. Your voice is not coming through.
This is the one I'm teaching, Mahabharata, Dicing and Exile. Vanaparva.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I think his internet connection was a little weak. Let's give him a couple of minutes. But Dr. Joydeep, in the meantime, would you like to say a few words about your course and we'll get it introduced? You had to come off mute, okay? You had to unmute yourself. You had to unmute yourself.
So, yes, I'm unmuted. Welcome, everyone. Although I cannot see your faces, I trust you can all see me. And I'm happy to introduce my course, the Bhagavad Gita in the West. It's a course I've taught previously at HUA, and it's really, without a doubt, for me, one of the most exciting, interesting courses I've taught, principally because of the way the dynamic evolved in the course between the students and me. The reason I teach at HUA is we have created an extraordinary space for Hindus to reflect on the engagement with modernity. It's an engagement we are all, whether you like it or not, whether you're conscious of it or not, Hinduism has entered the modern world. We all live in the modern world. We have to engage with the modern world. At the same time, modernity is not a development indigenous to Hinduism. Modernity came to India, sometimes violently, sometimes forcefully. It came, of course, first and foremost through the encounter with the West, through colonization, but then missionaries, Indian reformers, social reformers, and the modern Indian national movement, all in different ways, contributed to bringing modernity into Hinduism. Of course, we can live as completely modern Indians and ignore any aspect of Hinduism, and many Indians have made that choice so that they live as assimilated Indians. Assimilated to what? Assimilated to Western culture, assimilated to modernity. And that's a perfectly legitimate choice. And then you lose all connection with tradition. And for many people, that's even desirable. And they actively sort of force that process of losing connection. But if you're here at today's webinar, I'm guessing that there is some residual connection to Hinduism. Either there's some connection to your family, there's some connection to worship practices, there's some connection to texts. And so you're interested in achieving a synthesis of your Hinduism with what it means to live within a modern milieu. Let me say that you're on the right track, because without that question, we are all helplessly delivered over to an uncritical modernity. That's not just uncritical if you're a Hindu. Modernity in general is uncritical. So you've taken the first step towards philosophically thinking about your lives and locating yourselves in the context of how you want to live, what the purpose of life is, and so on. Yes, Kalyan, Vishwa is back.
Vishwa is back. I just want to, give him back
Okay.
his place.
Could you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm sorry about the glitch. I don't know. what that was. Okay, so Mahabharata 2 is the course which we will be studying in the upcoming semester. Then I will teach the war books, Dharma and Darshana is Shanti Parva to Svargarohana Parva, and then I will begin again at Adi Parva. So I'd like to draw your attention to it's not to praise Professor Bagchi or myself, but to praise Hindu University of America. I would like to now share with you a small second. These are our publications. Professor Bagchi and I wrote a very lengthy book from Oxford University Press on reception of Mahabharata in the West. We are both students of ancient philosophy and literature, not only Indian, but also Greek. In this book, Professor Bagchi and I argue for the text criticism of Mahabharata, how every word now in the critical edition is a defensible copy or a defensible text of the oldest common ancestor from which all manuscripts, be they northern manuscripts, southern manuscripts, Kashmiri manuscripts, Malayalam manuscripts, they all descend from this Vyasa Mahabharata. I just have these to show you. Professor Bagchi also showed how modernity tries to erase other identities such as the Jewish identity. He just published this book, which is, I think, an important work. So going back to stop the share and to share my PowerPoint. So you have this kind of expertise at Hindu University of America. Please try to support it by studying these texts, supported by making this project in any way possible successful. Returning now to my presentation. Share my PowerPoint has disappeared. So we were here. This is simply a course description of what you will study in the Mahabharata. You can go online and read it on the website. These are the texts we will be reading. Mahabharata books 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 are translated. The critical edition is translated by Van Buitenen. These are standard translations, accepted translations, scholarly translations. So when you cite from the Mahabharata, you should cite from this translation. If you're not happy with this translation, you may amend it. These are the final lectures by the great Suktankar, who put the whole critical edition project together. These two books are available on Amazon.com. So please, if you're registering for the course, please try to purchase these texts. Some scenes that you already know. Krishna is invited to Yudhishthira's Rajasuya sacrifice, where an important event called Shishupala Vadha happens, and a light emerges from Shishupala and enters Janardana. And so this is the first moksha event in the Mahabharata. Yudhishthira, of course, ignores it and goes off to the to the Dyuta, where he loses Draupadi, and Draupadi is humiliated in court. If you read the Sabha Parva, you will see that Draupadi is not just an innocent victim in the sense of a helpless woman. She enters the Sabha in her period, her hair disheveled, in channeling Shakti, the feminine force, and she brings into the court of Adharma its own destruction. So it is very Shakta, it is very Tantric. So these details are lost in the popular telling of the story. You will read this very carefully, and you'll see what a skilled legal advocate for the Pandavas she is in terms of dharma. When they go off into the forest, you all know Shiva and Arjuna get into a fight. Arjuna does tapas. This is called Kirata Virya, Kirata Virarjuna. So this is Arjuna and the Shiva in the form of a Kirata have a fight. Shiva gives him the Pashupata, and the Pashupata is a very important acquisition by Arjuna in the upcoming war. In the Vanaparva, you also see Bhima trying to meet Hanuman and tries to move the tail of Hanuman. And the upshot of this is that Hanuman will promise to sit on the flag of Arjuna while Krishna is driving the chariot, and Hanuman will roar loudly throughout the war, striking fear into the hearts of the enemy, Kauravas. You also know in the Virata Parva, they are in disguise. Draupadi is dressed as the beautiful Sairandri, and the evil Kichaka tries to lay hands on her, and Bhima will kill Kichaka. So there are all these events in this that you know. Finally, Krishna goes to the Hastinapura court to negotiate peace, but they try to tie him up, and he reveals himself in the Vishwarupa form, not a Vishwarupa form, but in the Purusha Sukta form, he reveals himself in that Sabha, marking the theological intervention into the adharma that has been perpetrated in the Hastinapura court. Okay? So I think I've come to the end of, okay. So in the last century, there was a great Tamil poet, he's the Mahakavi Subramanya Bharati, who wrote a poem called a drama called Panchali Shapadam in Tamil. He's a freedom fighter. So he transforms the entire episode of the Mahabharata, Draupadi's humiliation, into the colonial situation, and says that the Britishers were not brave heroes who conquered India, but they used wiles and guile and cheating exactly like the Kauravas, and therefore their rule is unjust. And instead of Draupadi, whom have they molested? They molested Mother Earth, Bharata Mata. So the anger with which Bharati writes does not come through in English translation. And I do not know Tamil, but according to Tamil speakers, this is, so Panchali will take a vow to avenge herself upon the feet of Sri Krishna, eternal feet of the power supreme, and also the mother of creation. This is Adi Parashakti. She uses the word Parashakti there about how she will see the blood gush out of these sinners, how she will use this to shampoo her hair, and how she will not tie her hair until then. And this is a little interesting here. The comb should be made of their ribs indeed. The comb should be carved out of their bones of chest. The skeleton of their chest should become the comb. Rarest, with that oil and comb, I will dress my hair so long, my hair oil their blood, my comb made of their chests. So as soon as she says this, all the voices of the gods and the siddhas say, may it be true, may it be true. And so you can kind of see how the Mahabharata is our national epic, according to Suktankar, and how we as Hindus cannot express ourselves except through the narratives of Mahabharata, except through the paradigms of this epic. It's not that we are Hindus and Mahabharata is a text that belongs to the community. No, no, no. We are a community that has been shaped, formed, and led by this text. So I hope I'll see you in this class, and I will go so far as to welcome you already.
Okay, terrific. Great. Over to you, Dr. Bakshi, please.
Thank you, Kalyan, and thank you, Vishwa. I want to ask a few questions because I see a lot of participants, but I don't see your faces. So please feel free to put this in chat. If you've enjoyed a technical education of any kind, engineering, medicine, etc., put a T into chat. And if you've enjoyed a humanities education, put an H into the chat. And let's just see what we're getting. Quite a few responses. H both. What's a P? I don't know what a P is. Someone put in a P. Okay. So we don't need to get absolutely every response, but as you can see, the bulk of the respondents, and I'm taking you as a representative group of Indians who turned out on a Saturday morning, whether you're based in the US, East Coast, West Coast, or India, there's a preponderance of technical education. And only a handful of people have humanities. And now I'm going to ask you to, again, answer a second question and put either an O if you consider yourself an observant Hindu, or an N if you think you're a non-observant Hindu. That is, you identify as Hindu, but you really do not have a full knowledge of Hinduism or a full practice. And let's see what we get. So O, largely O. Okay, so a very large number of O's and follow practices. So already in these two questions, you can see some kind of mismatch between the education that Hindus are receiving, which is completely technical, which does not address questions of philosophy, ethics, how to live in this world, how to follow dharma, what would traditionally be called following the Vedika dharma, and the actual self-understanding, which is that we're still observant. So that leaves a huge lacuna, in fact, a huge longing in many Hindus to say that the education I received, and very often from school onwards, the education we receive is basically a kind of clerical education. We're supposed to perform technical tasks, make provide a service industry from being clerics in the British railway system or the revenue system, all the way to being knowledge workers for the knowledge economy. The education is looking at us in a certain way, that we merely have to become accomplished at technical tasks, produce efficiency or corporate profits. But the larger part of education is not just technical education. And if you think technical education is all there is to education, then you've missed out on a lot of the purpose of being human, which is to really understand why we're here and what a meaningful life looks like and what the soul's gradual progress through this universe is. These are all questions that were front and center in Hinduism. Hinduism did not develop such a large scope of technical planning, organization of the world for very good reasons, because the jiva is considered a migrant in this universe, and the universe itself is not real. It's a projection that the jiva experiences every morning that it wakes up. It enters an external world, a sensory world, and it has to perform its karmas, it has to gain self-knowledge, and then whether it has gained self-knowledge or not, this world is going to be temporary and it's going to continue its journey. That understanding becomes hard to cohere with modernity. One of the texts where it has clearly spelled out and which has therefore become one of the central texts for Indians who are still in some way connected to Hinduism is the Bhagavad Gita. So let me now, with these questions, go to PowerPoint share. All right, so if you can see this, I'm going to go directly into slide view. So the course I'm teaching is the Bhagavad Gita in the West. It's a course in which both aspects are important. The Bhagavad Gita, because of these philosophical questions in a nutshell from Hinduism that it will teach us. The West, because as I said, one of the key encounters that we all live through is the encounter between Hinduism and modernity. And the West here does not represent a set of nations. It does not represent a racial or ethnic identity. It represents modernity, a set of modern ideas about the world that have entered India through colonial education and which we somehow have to cope with and which don't always cohere that well with what the traditional worldview is. So we have two options here. Either you give up the modernity, you give up the West aspect of it and say, I will be completely traditional and accept only a traditional worldview. Possible, but difficult to do. The other is to say, I give up the whole traditional thing because it does not cohere with the modern worldview. In fact, we will see later on people such as Ambedkar and others thought Hinduism was the problem with India's advance into modernity and said, let's get rid of Hinduism wholesale. So then you give up the left hand of this compound, the Bhagavad Gita in the West. Or, and this is the third path we will pursue in this class, is we try and understand both aspects and try to come to some kind of overarching worldview that allows us to integrate, to cohere these two aspects of what life in today's world would be like for most Indians. So why the Bhagavad Gita? This is a quote from Eric Sharp. It may well prove to be the case that to study Western interpretations of the Gita is in fact tantamount to studying in microcosm Western reactions to something much larger, Indian religion and culture in its entirety. So if you think this course is just about the Bhagavad Gita here is in a stand-in for the entire encounter that takes place between the West and India. And we look at that encounter through the lens of what people have written about the Bhagavad Gita, because they treated the Bhagavad Gita as equivalent to Indian culture as a whole. And so the attitudes about the Gita reveal a lot about the attitudes to India. In some way, I'm sure all of you read online things like The Wire and print, and I don't know what the others are, Medium and Scroll and all of these things. So in some way, you are situated in those debates. You are aware of some of those prejudices. They trickle down. You read them, maybe you don't even read the whole article, but someone provokes you on X or Twitter, and you react to that. Here is an opportunity to find out a deeper source of those ideas. So you're not just flying off the handle, reacting to something, but you're able to situate it in a larger context and say, okay, I understand that prejudice. It's an old prejudice. It's coming from the 19th century. It was first articulated here. And what you're giving us is actually a very weak version of that. But this is the context within which it actually took place. So it will help you grow individually, even if you're not looking to join HUA's academic programs, just taking certain courses that relate to your personal struggles, your personal identity, can help you grow and understand what you're facing today. So what is the danger we face when we try and read the Bhagavad Gita in the traditional way? Immediately, someone will come up with a criticism such as the following. The analytic thinking of Western interpreters who were schooled in historical philological methods stands in contrast to the traditional Indian commentators who not only harmonized and freely downplayed all breaks in the Gita, but above all sought to read their own philosophical theological concepts out of individual textual passages in order to secure Krishna's divine authority for them. This is the fear that haunts us when we read the Bhagavad Gita and we try and read it with the commentarial tradition. Don't all the commentators conflict? Doesn't each one claim that his position is the position that Krishna espouses? Isn't this all just about priests or Brahmins trying to claim authority and to mislead and beguile the people? Shouldn't we take a Western critical approach, which is non-dogmatic, which is non-theological, which isn't interested in questions of authority, and simply go with that? That's the question that we face when we try to read the Bhagavad Gita. Again and again, we face a second criticism that what Westerners do is the science of religion or the study of religion, whereas what Indians do is theology. So if you read the Bhagavad Gita traditionally, then you're just being theological. But if you read it with these philological lenses, these critical lenses that Stephen Cron talked about in the previous quote, that would be considered the study of religion. That's a presupposition that makes it very, very difficult to function with this integral sense of self, this holistic sense of self that I have tried to outline in the first part of my talk. In fact, part of the quote here makes the holism of the Pandit an actual criticism. Because he is supposed not only to function as a mere scholar, his view of the culture he embodies through his erudition is necessarily more holistic. Look at that. The word holistic is being used as a critique that Indian commentators cannot be trusted, Indian pundits cannot be trusted because their view of the culture is more holistic. Think about that and reflect on it for a while. Since when has it been a criticism of something to say it is whole, right? When is it a approval of something to say my view is only partial, my view is only one-sided? In fact, what we're looking for in education is not only to develop a holistic understanding of the text, to treat the text as a whole, but also a holistic sense of our situation in the world today, able to integrate global cultures, able to talk across cultures, and a holistic sense of ourselves, because that is ultimately everyone wants to feel whole and complete and secure in themselves. So you see how the reading of the Gita for about 200, 300 years has been put under such pressure that to try and evolve a holistic sense of the text, of culture, of the self becomes actually a criticism. Let me pause here because I like to get some questions. If there are any questions on the way, I don't see any right now, so let me continue.
So there are some questions here, okay. One question is, would you be using a specific translation of the Bhagavad Gita? That's the question. So what text? You have to say a little bit about the text you're going to be using in the course.
We will be looking at Sargent's translation and one or two others, but we're not looking at a specific text of the Bhagavad Gita because the textbooks, and I have them right here, I hope with the Zooms. So we will be using, no, this is difficult to do on Zoom. The Universal Gita by Eric Sharp. We will be using Modern Indian Interpreters of the Bhagavad Gita by Minor. And we will be using the latest sort of overall view of the Bhagavad Gita called the Bhagavad Gita Biography by Richard Davis. Okay. I was looking to learn Bhagavad Gita in its original format. How much of focus would be that? There is an excellent course at HUA. I think you could still sign up for it, offered by Haridas Radhakrishnan, which is the Bhagavad Gita in Sanskrit or Sanskrit through the Bhagavad Gita. And you should definitely sign up for that course if you
There,
want the Bhagavad Gita in its
there,
original form.
there is also the graduate level course which we are offering this semester called Introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. That is taught by Swamini Agamananda Saraswati. That's also available. That's another graduate level course.
So please sign up for those two courses. Someone has asked, aren't all those books authored by Westerners? Yes, and the theme of the course is the way Westerners looked at the Bhagavad Gita. So that's why we're looking at textbooks by Westerners.
So let me address the question there. Okay. See, in the upcoming semester, starting in the second half of August, we are offering two courses. One is called Introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, taught by Swamini Agamananda Saraswati. And the other is called the Bhagavad Gita and the West, taught by Dr. Joydeep Bakshi. These two courses, they are both on the Bhagavad Gita. The introduction to the Bhagavad Gita is going to be a very classical, traditional, Hindu, Vedantic introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so there is no concern in that course for what the West has said or Western scholars have said about the Bhagavad Gita. None at all. The only person we are going to be studying there in that course is the text itself, what Krishna said to Arjuna in the text, and what Adi Shankara had to say about what Krishna said to Arjuna in the text. Okay, so that's the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita. Dr. Bakchi's course, the Bhagavad Gita and the West, it focuses on what the West has said, what Western scholars have said, how they received the Bhagavad Gita into the Western paradigm, and all of the commentary that arose from that. So these are sort of two sides, two complementary courses. And in fact, if people were so adventurous, I would suggest you take both the courses, and you'll get both sides, both views in the same semester. Of course, it's a tremendous commitment to make, but who knows, some of you may be open to that.
Okay, thank you, Kalyan. With that, I will continue. Please do consider taking all two or all three of the courses. Everything you do on the Bhagavad Gita will increase your understanding of the text, your respect for the text, and your own understanding of yourselves. So there are many, many different perspectives from which to approach this. Let's continue with our slides. Are you seeing this? So from the perspective of a Western scholar, all we need is the historically oriented critical approach. And that approach can make use of the Indian Panditya for first-hand information, but should not accept its theological dimension without compromising its aims as a historical subject. So the knowledge from traditional Indian scholars has to be extracted, but we have to bracket out the theological understanding of the text and treat it merely as a cultural artifact. An example, because this is borrowed from what happens in the 19th century in 18th, 19th century in biblical criticism, is to say we'll take the Bible, but we won't accept its theological claims. We won't accept its status as scripture, as revelation, and we look at it merely as a cultural artifact. And we'll give cultural, sociological interpretations for everything in the Bible. Why is this said? Because there were some priests who wanted to control the population, so they wrote this. Everything now is decomposed in terms of a putative history of the culture. So there is no claim to authority or knowledge in the scripture itself. The locus of authority, the locus of knowledge now is transferred to the university professor who says, look, the text is not going to teach you anything, but I can teach you something about the text. If that's the perspective, then you're not really reading the Bhagavad Gita anymore. And even if you took an excellent class on the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Agananda, you will be skeptical and you'll say, she's making claims on behalf of the text, but we have learned, we are now modern, we are critical, we're enlightened. We have learned that the text has nothing to teach. Only professors can teach us about the text. And this person is claiming that the text will teach us, the text will guide us. We can't accept that as modern. So you see how without engaging this source of Western criticism, the way traditional texts have been evacuated of meaning, you're not going to be able to read traditional texts in the same spirit anymore. All right, let us skip this because some of them are repetitive, and let me go to the plan of the course. It is quite a comprehensive survey from the first translation to romantics and idealists. There was a huge debate under section 2. You will see there was a huge debate in Europe about the reception of Indian thought. The first people who translated and read Indian texts were very excited and thought India was the land of revelation. They wanted to find a Christian origin for the West beyond even the Jewish origin. So they postulated that India was that origin for all thought, all philosophy. Later on, of course, that was attacked, and there were many people who became very critical and said Hinduism is not a model. India can't be the origin. It's in fact a decadent culture. It's a fallen culture. The British could conquer it, and so on. So all these European anxieties were worked out in this debate over how to receive the Gita. Then we will look at missionaries and mystics. So there's a whole set of missionary criticisms of the Bhagavad Gita, which then translate into criticisms of modern Hinduism or modern India. And then there is a reception by mystics in Europe who again esotericize the Bhagavad Gita and talk about a metaphysics of light and so on. So it's no longer seen as rigorous philosophy, but merely as a mystical text. And that's one of the problems in the reception we're trying to undo. We will then look at reconstructions of an original Gita. We will also look at Renaissance, radicalism, and theosophy. And next slide. We will go on to Gandhi's Gita, end with 3 sections on Rudolf Hauer and Rudolf Otto and Jacob Hauer. So these are right now names to you, but these are actually very, very influential thinkers. J.W. Hauer was a Nazi, so you know that sometimes criticisms come up about the Bhagavad Gita that, oh, the Nazis like this text, or Himmler carried this text with him. Wendy Doniger says that Bhagavad Gita is not a very nice text. It's a dishonest text. It's actually about war, and most Hindus don't appreciate what a sort of violent text it is. So we will trace some of these criticisms back. Why were the Nazis interested in the Gita and so on? Then we will look at a series of Indian commentators, largely Indian commentators. P.N. Bajaj, who says the decline of Indian culture begins with the time that the Bhagavad Gita comes to prominence. So before that, everything was fine with India, and then it declined because of the Gita. Other criticisms of the Gita articulated by Ambedkar, T.D. Kosambi. Kosambi is a well-known Marxist, and most recently by Meghnad Desai, who wrote a small book on the Bhagavad Gita. Again, you will see that these criticisms, which get a lot of play on social media and TV talk shows in India, they're not new criticisms. We'll trace some of them back over 100, 200 years. And finally, we look at contemporary Gita scholarship. All right. Let us look at some features of the Western reception. I'm not going to do all of them, but just give you a tantalizing sort of entree into the course. The Bhagavad Gita was the Kurukshetra on which European intelligentsia battled over how to understand Indian culture and its deep past. In a period of European expansionism and the British acquisition of colonial control over South Asia, debates over this ancient text frequently took on a decidedly contemporary political valence. If you think about that quote is as true now as it has ever been, as it was 200 or 300 years ago. Not only is the quote as true now about the Bhagavad Gita, but take up any Indian text today. Take up the Veda, take up Manusmriti, take up Mahabharata, take up Ramayana. The debates are not about the text itself anymore. The debates have taken on a contemporary political valence. And we are all, if you read the text, you are orthodox, backward, reactionary, you're for the suppression of women. If you read the Mahabharata, you're reading a text that recommends the rape of a woman, either in the Subhadra episode or in the Draupadi episode. So you see how even today, reading the text has become a political choice rather than a philosophical choice. I will give you a few minutes for questions and end with 2 slides, which will sort of cap this discussion. But I hope that at least this much is giving you an appreciation for how our ability to access the text has changed. We can no longer simply attend classes and receive these texts, one, because of the historical criticism that the text no longer has anything to teach us, but we have things to say about the text, and two, because of the political criticism that choosing to read a traditional text is a political act, it's an act of suppression, it's an act of exclusion, etc. So we no longer talk about the text, but what it means for us to read the text or what it says about us when we read the text. Let me look at a few questions.
So Jaideep, we are running out of time. I just want to quickly say a couple of things. Ankur, can you throw up the first poll about the two courses?
Mhm.
So we want to take a quick poll, and the poll will ask you, are you interested in these courses? Right now, just say yes or no. Yeah, there are four choices. Please respond to these poll questions, and then we'll be in touch with you very quickly over the course of the next few days. In fact, next week, we'll be in touch with you. I also wanted to say this. As you can see, right? See, one of the important differences between attending a pravachan about the Bhagavad Gita, a pravachan, a katha about the Mahabharata, in a traditional setting of an ashram, a gurukulam, or a mandir, for that matter, is very different than taking an academic approach to the study of the same texts. So in this webinar, we kind of contrasted the two approaches. The study of a text from its own standpoint, from the philosophical message that it seeks to communicate, and the timeless nature of those messages that it seeks to communicate to a new audience in a new generation, right? That is one aspect of these texts. But then there is also the historical aspect of how these texts were received, interpreted, commented upon by Western scholars in the last few hundred years. So at HUA, we pay attention to both of these aspects. And that makes the programs at HUA very unique and almost unparalleled, in the sense that you can't get this kind of look at both sides in an academic way, with the academic rigor that's required almost anywhere in the world. Okay, so I mean, I can say that with a reasonable degree of confidence, because this type of expertise and deep research is very, very hard to find. People have expertise in one area or one very narrow area, right? So I also want to point out that these courses are all embedded in our Master of Arts degree in Hindu Studies and the Doctor of Hindu Studies programs. These are graduate level courses. They are not the community education level courses. They are much more intense. There's a tremendous amount of reading, a lot of work to do, but they're extremely enriching, extremely sophisticated, and you'll find that as you take these courses, you'll be deeply drawn into the possibility and potential of a graduate education in Hindu studies. And I have a second poll that Ankur is going to put up now, and I request you to fill that out. Are you interested in the Master of Arts in Hindu Studies and the Doctor of Hindu Studies programs? So, Ankur.
Just before I put up that poll, 46 out of 80 people have filled out the first poll. So try to find it, minimize, let us know yes, no. Let me leave that up for a minute before I put up the...
Please, it's okay to say no, you're not interested, okay? Just fill it out so everybody gets to answer the question. Say, I'm not interested at all, never. That's perfectly fine, okay? Just answer the question, all right? Okay. And then Ankur will put up the second poll, and then we'll conclude with the few concluding slides from Dr. Joydeep Bakshi. I'll hand it over to him in just a minute, okay? Ankur, go ahead and put up the second poll, please.
All right. Thank you for letting us know. We'll be in touch. I think I will specifically be calling you later on this week. And so now I've got the MA in Hindu Studies and the Doctor of Hindu Studies poll up. So please let us know if you're interested in those programs.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing about these programs, right? A lot of Hindus who are very committed to Hinduism, who have deeply studied Hindu Dharma from their own standpoints, through their own sampradayas, whether you're from ISKCON or whether you're from, say, for example, Swaminarayan Sampradaya or Advaita Vedanta or Madhva Sampradaya, or whatever your particular background, you will find that these Hindu studies programs at the graduate level to be incredibly enriching. And I can't overstate the relevance, the value of these programs for all Hindus who have a commitment to participate and contribute to the re-emergence, the revitalization, the rejuvenation of Sanatana Dharma in our modern contemporary times. Okay, whether we like it or not, whether we notice it or not, the wheel of Sanatana Dharma is turning. After a long period of decline and a long dark twilight, Sanatana Dharma is waking up again. It's a slow awakening, and I believe if you want to participate in that awakening as a responsible, knowledgeable, and a scholarly participant, these programs would be invaluable for you. Okay, so Ankur, put up the polls. I mean, regarding scholarships, you should write to us. Okay, those of you should write to us, but we really would encourage those of you who can pay to pay. But please do write to us and we'll engage with you. All right, back to you, Dr. Bakchi. You can wrap it up with a few concluding slides.
I'll wrap it up in a few minutes, and I won't show slides. I will just speak personally off the cuff. For many of us, I grew up in a very, let's say, middle-class, traditional Indian family. Traditional in the sense not of orthodox, but traditional in the sense that completely westernized, convent education, etc., etc. And the encounter with the West was limited to English, sciences, as many of you said, technical education, and of course, fetish objects such as cars and TVs and whiskey and so on. For many of us, that's the extent of the engagement with the West. So I want you to appreciate this course not only as about the Bhagavad Gita, not only as understanding the Bhagavad Gita, but also deepening your understanding of what the West is, deepening your appreciation of the intellectual legacy of the West as it affects you personally, so that you go beyond merely a fetishistic engagement with consumer products and start really thinking about where you are in the world today and what your goal, your journey, your destiny should be as someone who is intellectual, thinking, feeling, experiencing things. So it's about a process of deepening your encounter with the West as well. Let me end with that. So feel free to ask questions, or I will hand over to Kalyan.
Yeah, so we'll take a few questions in the Q&A box, okay? Only in the Q&A box. And Vishwaji, I see, is already typing answers furiously. Vishwa, if you want to take up a question that strikes you as interesting and speak to it, please, you can, okay? And Jaydeep, you also, if you want to pick up a particular question and elaborate, please.
Okay. I answered most questions. I didn't know the answer to one student who was asking, is MA Hindu Studies a prerequisite for DHA, Doctor of Hindu Studies?
I can speak to that, okay. See, if you if you don't have a sufficient grounding in Hindu studies, yes, it is a prerequisite. For example, if you have a Master of Science in engineering, okay, or if you have an MBA, you have an MBA degree, okay, you may have a master's degree already, but that doesn't constitute adequate foundations in Hindu studies. So you'll have to take an MA in Hindu studies and then go to the Doctor of Hindu Studies. However, if you already have a master's degree in the humanities, say for example in theology or in religious studies or in philosophy or in Sanskrit, etc., in certain cases like that, we can consider a direct admission into the Doctor of Hindu Studies program. Okay, so it be a case-by-case decision, and people who get admitted into the Doctor of Hindu Studies may also be recommended to take a few remedial courses from the Master of Arts in Hindu Studies just to kind of catch up on some of the basic background. All courses are taught online, today, because that's the best way to conduct these courses. But we do have now, as of this morning, right, as of this week, we have now 2 campuses. We have a campus in Florida, and we now also have a campus in California with the acquisition of the California College of Ayurveda. So, I think you'll be seeing announcements for some kinds of retreat-based courses in each of these campuses going forward. So that's that, okay. Any other questions we want to pick up?
There's a question for Joy about recommendation for a book.
Mm-hmm. What is the question?
For terms of the humanities, do you recommend anything to learn the various terms of humanities?
To learn the various terms of humanities. Well, my courses, of course, introduce you to those terms. Offhand, I can't think of a book. There are various encyclopedias and dictionaries I could refer you to, but they're all very advanced. If you don't have an exposure, then really taking a course is the best way.
All right, everybody, we've gone about 9-10 minutes over time. I would like to conclude this webinar today by thanking all of the people who participated in the audience, and of course, our 2 professors, Dr. Vishwaduri and Dr. Jaydeep Bakshi. It's always a tremendous pleasure to have you all.
There are 2 messages in Q&A. Could you read those 2, please?
Okay, there is so these are just sort of comments. Okay, so as far as scholarships are concerned, you have to write to us separately. Okay, please. Suktankar. Okay, the name of
answered that.
You answered that. Okay.
I answered.
All right. Okay. Okay, great. Excellent.
And let me also say thank you to Ankur, our wonderful HUA host, who keeps these
Thank you,
things going
Ankur.
so smoothly, so efficiently. It's easy
It's
to
very
present when you're
nice
doing
to see
everything.
you.
No, it's my pleasure. Amazing being on. Just all the information and knowledge I've absorbed just hosting these webinars is amazing. And today was particularly great. And I just encourage all of our audience, enroll in a course. You're not going to regret it. It's going to be amazing. You're going to learn so much, and join us on this dharmic mission. Take a course. See you in the next webinar. Join us for a retreat. And of course, Dr. Bakshi and Dr. Aduri are some of our most prominent and wonderful faculty. So you'll definitely enjoy their courses.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to have Dr. Mark Halpern, the founder and president of the California College of Ayurveda, on, and I'll be with him in the very special town hall for the 2 communities, the HUA community and the CCA community. It'll be fantastic. So please don't miss that webinar. With that, I'm going to say namaste to all of you. Thank you. Have a fantastic weekend.
Thank you.
Namaste. Bye-bye.
Namaste.